This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
He's Greg, I'm Nick. It's the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Sign up now at FanDuel.com/Boston and claim your $200 bonus. Greg, we're going to get into some of the draft stuff, but let's first start with, sounds like a broken freaking record, Mac Jones drama. Mike Lombardi comes out and he shoots down the Mac being shopped story. That was a thing last week. It really came down to semantics from Lombardi, but what did you think of what he said, and do you tend to agree with what he said?
Yeah, I think Mike's pretty accurate on all things Patriots. He knows the way Belichick works. I mean, they worked alongside each other not only in Cleveland but New England, so he knows exactly how he does things. And I thought he made a lot of really good points on his podcast, the GM Shuffle, which I think that every football fan should listen to. I learn a lot from him. I think Mike's really good. Some people don't like him, but I think he's pretty accurate on Patriots related stuff. And plus, he had one of his sons, Mick, worked for the Patriots. Now he works for the Raiders. Both sons work for the Raiders now, and Josh McDaniels. So that there's a lot of insight to the way things are done in New England. And I think, I think Mike is right. Mike Lombardi, and I'm not going to say Florio was wrong. Obviously, somebody told him that information, but I do think the word shopped is semantics. I mean, do I think that Mac Jones was discussed? Yeah. Do I think maybe some teams brought him up? I know the Raiders didn't. But did it come up in the course of conversations? Yeah, sure. I think there's a very select few guys in the league, maybe on one hand, maybe on two hands, that there's no discussions about. Remember, there was a report, and I don't know if it was Lombardi, but there was a report that at the time of the probably about 6 months before the Jimmy Garoppolo trade, there was a report that Belichick brought up Tom Brady to the 49ers, and they kind of I think John Lynch told this story that he laughed, they didn't think Belichick was being serious when he probably was a little bit, but wanted to see what he could get. And so if Bill Belichick can discuss Tom Brady, then he can discuss Mac Jones, who hasn't proven yet. I mean, I like Mac. I think he has a chance to be a franchise quarterback. I think, but obviously what happened last year is a negative in a lot of people's eyes, but it doesn't change the fact, as far as the prospect, the player itself, for me, that, I think he has a chance. And so, but it's not definitive, no way. So nobody is off limits. And so that Mac Jones was discussed, as I've either written about or talked about, it's not a surprise, and it's during a dead time, between free agency, between the draft, when everybody who has a website that makes its living on clicks and advertisements, like certain websites, if they get a little morsel of something, sort of like Felger and Maz, I mean, they run with crap all the time, and they admit it just for content's sake. I think this was a content thing.
Conversations happen, and Mac Jones, as you said, is not untouchable. And I would not be surprised if conversations happened about him early in the offseason. And if you are Bill Belichick, frankly, you are not doing your job if you're not having those conversations at some level. Was it Bill calling teams desperately trying to get rid of Mac Jones? No. And I think that's where people, when you buy into the shopping term, I think that's the difference. Shopping, it really kind of signals desperation. If you're shopping somebody, you're trying to get rid of them, man. Hey, look, this is what I got. Best offer. I'll take best. That's not what was happening. Were there conversations? Yes, because if you can get a first-round pick for Mac Jones, you would do it, I would imagine, if you're Belichick. If you could get a second-round pick and a player for Mac Jones, you might even think about it if you like one of the quarterbacks in the draft this year. So, yeah, those talks happen, but shopping is strong. Shopping means that you're trying to get rid of that dude.
That dude's on the way out. That it's over, and it's over in the coach's eyes, and I just don't think that's the case at all.
Yep, all hope is lost. Shopping is DeAndre Hopkins right now. When the Cardinals say, "Hey man, go talk to other teams," and they're desperate to get rid of him because his market is really non-existent. That's shopping a guy. When you know you've got to get rid of him, back against the wall, you got to make a move. More on Mac Jones here. Our buddy Bert Breer says that Jones lost support in the building. Have you heard the same thing?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. And everybody knows I love Bert. He's my guy. He's one of my close friends in this business. I just personally, I think he's listening to the wrong people in the building on this. I think these are people, and you can sort of imagine who they might be. People with axe to grind after last season and with Mac Jones. And, I just think he's wrong. I mean, like he also put, just to give you an example, he also put in his column at SI.com, he said, fourth round pick Bailey Zappi shined when Jones got hurt, and the incumbent staff felt like a big reason for that, in addition to an offensive plan adjusted to fit him, was that Zappi was following the coaching. The staff did try some concepts built to get Zappi playing fast by eating up easy yardage and used those same concepts for Jones. The result was that the coaching staff came out of the year feeling the difference between the two quarterbacks wasn't massive. Okay, so everybody knows that I watched the film pretty closely, and people that have been listening to this podcast, especially last season, when I would say that we were highly accurate from the offseason through the end of the season on what was going on with this offense. That is what they said about the scheme and about the plays and how they did it for Zappi, and they also did it for Jones. It's false. It is factually false. And we said it. This is in hindsight. We said it at the time. We came out of those games and we said, why aren't they running? The numbers were there. The number of play action passes. Let's just put aside the defenses that they were playing. The Lions, which at the time was the worst defense in the league. The Browns, which was horrendous. Like guys were wide open all over the place. And then even in the Bears game, that's when I really was like, what the hell's going on? Because Bailey Zappi comes in and they're running this like long play action. Let's get it blocked up. And, guys are running. I said at the time, and I pointed out in film, like what they ran for Mac, which was, if people want to really remember and be factual about this, when they were running the offense for Mac, it was all about, it was basically who's the Tampa coach who was with the Cardinals? Bruce Arians. It was, let's be aggressive. Let's chuck the ball down the field, 50-50 balls. And it was crap. It wasn't what Mac Jones does well. And then all of a sudden, Bailey Zappi comes in. They're running the ball, play action, guys wide open. That's factually incorrect. And I'm sure somebody's telling Bert this, but I will say this. That person doesn't know jack squat about NFL offense, which if they were on the staff last year, we know that to be the fact because that was one of the worst offenses in the league. And so that kind of stuff, like I don't care what that source is saying. They're just wrong. They're biased, and they're still trying to cover their ass for last year and blaming it all on Mac, and it's a bunch of bull crap. And, Bailey Zappi, look, you want to say he was great in those games. What happened in the Bears game? Yes, he came in with some really nice design plays that made me want to think, did they know Bailey was coming in and they saved those? And I'm not going to back down from that. That was my initial thought. And then all of a sudden, guess what happened in the second? First of all, Zappi gave them a lead. They had a halftime lead against the Bears. What happened? They got their doors blown off, couldn't do jack squat once those game plan plays for Bailey Zappi were gone, and they got embarrassed on their home field against a team that never won the rest of the season. So I'm sorry, that stuff is a bunch of bullcrap.
Yeah, and the plays that Zappi made, look, he hit a wide open receiver. A guy was open. I think it was Jacoby by like 20 yards. He was uncovered. And Devontae Parker, I think, is the guy. It was either Parker or Aguilar. I think it was Parker who made a tremendous play down the sideline for Zappi as well. So those were the two big plays he made, a guy wide ass open and a guy who made a terrific individual play on a 50-50 ball. I'm not going to lose my mind over, a couple of drives by Bailey Zappi against Chicago when, as you mentioned, Greg, the competition was not at the level before then for him. I would also say, look, I'm just tired of this nonsense. To me, there are certain people in the building that are making Mac Jones to be the scapegoat. We know what the problem was last year. The problem was not Mac Jones. He was not the biggest problem in the building. The biggest problem in the building was Bill Belichick gave the offense to two coaches who were not ready to coach the offense, had no idea how to call plays, had no idea what to do, did not know how to utilize the strengths of Mac Jones. They had receivers at times that couldn't get open. They had a tight end in Jonnu Smith who got traded for a 7th-round pick because he was useless. Hunter Henry was misused. Give me a break. The offensive line was inconsistent with penalties and other stuff. They had injuries up front as well. Did Mac Jones play great? No, he didn't play great. Did he play better as the year went on? I thought he played better as the year went on. But the problem was Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, which began with Bill Belichick. It was a fakakta idea. It was a terrible approach. It blew up in their face. Stop making Mac Jones the scapegoat. Stop. Let this guy play football. Let him have weapons around him with a competent offensive line, with a guy that actually knows how to call plays in Bill O'Brien. Then let's judge. Can we stop with the stuff? I see my guy Adam Jones, in the afternoon talking about how Mac Jones has never won a QB competition. That's just patently false. Yeah. We're at the point now. We're at the point now where we're just spreading bullshit about this guy. Like, we're making stuff up. Just let him play football. And if he stinks this year with Bill O'Brien and good weapons and a good offensive line, I'll be the first guy, along with Greg, saying Mac Jones is not the franchise quarterback. Mm-hmm. They need to go in a different direction. But this scapegoating by Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, or one of their lackeys, whoever's doing this, it is putrid. It's disgusting. It's repugnant. It's ridiculous. It's irresponsible. Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, Bill Belichick, full stop. That's why your offense wasn't good last year. Enough is enough. Can we move the hell on? We're 3 weeks away from the draft, less than 3 weeks away from the draft, and we're still talking about Bailey freaking Zappi. Okay.
Oh, I will. That was great. And did Adam Jones forget about Bryce Young? I mean, going into that year, everybody thought Bryce Young was going to be the guy. He was going to come in and take the job. And guess what? Mac Jones beat his ass, and he won a national championship. So what are we? And was a Heisman. He was up there for the Heisman. So what are we talking about?
This stuff about Mac doesn't like to be coached hard, and Mac isn't competitive, and Mac's not working in the facility enough. All of a sudden, Mac Jones is like public enemy number one in some circles. Mac Jones. Like, if you know anything about this guy, and again, I'm not telling you that he's going to be great. I've been consistent. I believe Greg has been consistent. We believe his ceiling is somewhere near the top 15 in the NFL, closer to 15 than 10. That's where he is if he plays at his best. He doesn't have unbelievable, quote-unquote, gifts. His processing is his superpower. He's got better athleticism than you think because people thought he couldn't even move. His arm strength is not great, but he's got an incredible football IQ. He works his ass off. He is highly competitive. That's what his track record is. That's who he is. Can we stop building these false narratives surrounding Mac Jones? All of a sudden, he doesn't want to compete. He doesn't care about the game. Like, what are we doing here? You can agree to disagree about his ability on the field. You can tell me you don't like him as a quarterback. But what you can't tell me is that the guy doesn't work his butt off, that he doesn't care, that he's not competitive, that he didn't beat out Bryce Young, who ended up winning the Heisman freaking trophy and will maybe be the number one pick in a little over 2 weeks here. You can't tell me that stuff because it's BS. Let's keep it straight. And I know the radio tricks. I'm part of the game. I understand it. But this theory that you got to throw shit up against the wall to get good radio is nonsense. And you don't have to create things that aren't there to be, a good radio show or compelling. You can find different ways to be compelling. My 2 cents. Talking about Mac Jones, Bert and Mike Giardi, by the way, NFL Network, what are you doing? Giardi is great at what he does. Both those guys reporting that Mac was in the building. He was in the building and throwing. Can you imagine Mac Jones, Greg, was actually doing work in the offseason?
Yeah, and also, putting on top of that, Phil Perry had a report that really, echoes a lot of what we've talked about. And, what I believe is closer to the truth, that, a lot of players, current and former players around the Patriots and people in the building, they're sick of this crap. Like, it's just Like, it's the Patriots should be distancing themselves from last year. They should not be talking about it. Like, move on to 2023, and doing all this Jones stuff. Like, it's just a disservice to the team. Whatever happened to clean slate and all this stuff, and last season doesn't matter. Like, I think a lot of people around the team, players on the team, are sick of this stuff as we are, and they see Mac. Mac's been around. He's been in the building. He's throwing. He's going to be there for the all the offseason stuff, which I think starts April 17th. He's already been there. Like, he's doing exactly what he should do. And credit to Bailey Zappi that he's also there. And this does not surprise me, because I think they're two quarterbacks cut from the same cloth, and that's why the Patriots have drafted these guys. And so, I think, like, people just need to leave last season alone. It's over. It really would have helped, going back to something we've talked about before, Nick, and people, the Bill people will be like, oh, what do you expect of him? Like, if Bill just would have come out, and this is an offshoot of this, if Bill just would have come out and fallen on the sword, which he has done in some respects, and certainly his decisions, and I think some of the stuff in private, if he just would have come out, just like he said, Dan Shaughnessy, if this doesn't work, blame me. It's my responsibility. If he would have come out and said, look, it was my responsibility, next season's going to be a clean slate, everyone would have been able to move on, which would have been good for the team as a whole. But instead, they're still dragging their ass on this stuff because Bill won't admit publicly that he was at fault, which he should have done. And, it's led to a bunch of crap, like you said. And I can't wait till they get on the field, which I think the first time we see them is early May. Because then I do think the page is turned and we can get to on-field stuff.
Two more quick things before we get to our friends at FanDuel, and then a whole lot more we got to talk about, including draft stuff, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow. To go hand in hand with the Bill Belichick stuff, Bill could help Mac by coming out and, not necessarily praising him, but to give a little bit more public support to his young quarterback. And I know that Bill has a hair across his tuchus, apparently, because Mac talked to Alabama coaches and whatever the hell else happened. But let's all be adults. Let's all be adults. Let's move on, as Greg is saying, to 2023. The past is the past. Show at least a little bit of support and belief that this guy can be your quarterback, instead of always, tiptoeing through the tulips when you're asked about it at the owners' meetings and everywhere else. Yeah, he can play quarterback. Thanks, Bill, and you can coach. I appreciate it. We know he can play quarterback. You picked him in the first round, so that's not helping. And just, it comes down to this with Mac. Again, you want to go back and forth about his play cool. Stop the character assassination. Stop the character assassination. He doesn't deserve it. It's ridiculous. And you're grabbing onto low-hanging fruit. Stop the character assassination. Evaluate his play on the field. Cool. Don't tell me the dude doesn't have it in his heart. He's not hard work and stuff like that. That's ridiculous. All right. Before we get to some NFL news and notes quick, and then, of course, we've got to get to the draft. FanDuel, Greg, the best, and I mean the absolute best betting app out there in the world.
Yeah, grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back. And there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official partner of Major League Baseball. And let's also add, the NHL and NBA playoffs are getting going, and that is some good stuff right there. And new customers and Mass can get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston. Finally, you can bet on all your favorite sports, from the money line to point spreads to players props and more, and from anywhere. The bed, your car, the bathroom, anywhere you want. And I do that all the time. Made a little bit of money on the NCAA tournament, getting in on the baseball, because now with the pitch clock, I can actually watch an entire baseball game in about 2.5 hours, which is nice. So bet on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Don't miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. 21 plus and present in Mass. First online real wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Hope is here. gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234.
FanDuel is the ish. Couple quick news and notes here across the league before we get to the draft stuff. OBJ to the Ravens, Greg.
Yeah, way too expensive. Even though they did tack on voidable years, so the cap hit I think is like $4 million the first year, but $15 million guaranteed for a guy who hasn't been healthy in a long time and hasn't been like a dominating number one in years is way too rich. To me, it tells me that Lamar Jackson is back, at least on the 1-year franchise tender. So, there's no way the Patriots would have done that deal. Not a chance in hell.
It's front office malpractice. I tweeted that at Nick C Radio. To give that guy $15 million guaranteed is hilarious. I don't know if anybody was around $10 million guaranteed for him. So the Ravens dramatically overpaid the market for OBJ. They're in in a desperate situation. I think this was as much a, hey, Lamar, we're going to get your guy, than anything else. We'll give you your guy for this year. Come on back, play on this tag, and let's see if we can work out a deal down the road. I think that's what this is. I don't, as you said, Greg, I don't know how you could pay him that much money given the last couple of years. Jeffrey Okudah, gone from Detroit. He gets traded to Atlanta for a 5th-round pick. Let's remind people that Okudah was the 3rd overall pick by Matt Patricia. Now, some people I saw reacting to this trade said they believe that Okudah still has high-end skill and could be a number 1 cornerback. The Falcons' 5th-round pick seems like a high-reward, low-risk kind of deal. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, I was very surprised. I mean, I was the biggest Okudah guy in the draft, but you don't go 3rd overall as a cornerback if you don't have like top-end talent. And to me, for a 5th-round pick, I mean, and you look at what the Patriots have at cornerback, and we talk about the need for a number 1, which, he obviously, as a 3rd overall pick, has that potential. To me, that the Patriots didn't do this deal, it tells me that Matt Patricia, hated Okudah and didn't think he's a good fit for the Patriots scheme, his type of scheme, or else I think this is totally a Patriots type deal. I mean, I think if I read this right, I think the Falcons are his cap number is only $5.2 million this year, and then I think he's a free agent. I don't know if there's a 5th-year option involved in that. There very well might be, but yeah, it's a Patriots type deal, and that they didn't do it tells me that Matt Patricia not a Jeff Okudah fan.
Yesterday on Twitter, it was all the story across the NFL. Devin White has requested a trade from the Buccaneers. Greg, he's making just under $12 million this year. It is a contract year. Of course, you look at Edmonds, you look at Smith as other linebackers that got big time contracts. Seems like Tampa and White are not necessarily agreeing on the numbers right now. He wants out. I would love to bring him here. I would love him as a Patriot. I just can't imagine Bill paying what it's going to cost between the picks and, the money in the long run. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a Brandon Cooks kind of deal where you trade for White, you play him this year, and then you maybe trade him before the draft next year. Maybe that's what you do. But it certainly seems like there's a little bit of an issue between White and the Bucs, and of course we're always looking at athletic linebackers, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have been pining for one forever. I think Devin White, when he is right, he's one of the best in the league and can go sideline to sideline. I'm sure, Nick, you're the same way, that, we probably watched more than our fair share of Bucs games last year because of the Tom Brady effect. And I got to tell you, I thought Devin White last year was one of those typical guys who won a Super Bowl, sort of, made his bones during the Super Bowl year, and then kind of took the pedal off the gas. In a lot of games, I did not like his film. I questioned his effort at times, and I think it was questioned in general. And I think he had to answer that a few times. But, the Patriots paying, I can't see the Patriots, like you said, $12 million basically for this year, plus a draft pick, and then it would have to be some sort of conditional thing on whether you can sign him to a contract extension. But again, I just don't see the Patriots doing this. Now, I did see something interesting on Twitter before we came on that, a guy who is pretty plugged in with the Bills said something along the lines of like, I'd much rather do a Devin White deal than a DeAndre Hopkins deal for the Bills. And, I tend to agree with them, even though, you put him together with Milano, that's kind of a small, undersized, fast linebackers, certainly built for the modern game, the sort of the anti-Patriots. But, I could see that. I could see him going. I think he would be a good fit in the Bills type of system and with Sean McDermott taking over the play calling there.
And what makes it interesting is the Patriots are one of 13 or 14 teams I saw yesterday that have the cap space right now that could bring in Devin White without restructuring anybody. They could just do a straight up deal with the cap space they have. So, they would have the inside track versus a number of other teams. The effort, look, it's a legitimate point. Talent-wise, the guy is so talented. You wonder, though, contract year, maybe the effort will be a little bit better this season, right? Because he's playing for maybe 18, 19 million a year after what Edmonds got. So interesting player. I don't think they'll pay what it would take to bring him in, though. All right, let's get to the draft. Really, we just want to take a look at the 14th pick here and go through a couple of possibilities. Pro Football Focus has their draft simulator. Both Greg and I use that to come up with the 14th pick. We'll go through one scenario with Greg. I'll go through some of the names and see who Greg picked. Then I'll do the same thing with me. And then we'll talk about a possible trade that we would like if we want to make a trade from that 14th pick. So let's start with Greg's. So Greg's simulation here from Pro Football Focus. Not too much of a surprise. Young Stroud up top. Will Anderson is pretty much the universal pick at 3, who is the edge from Alabama. Dude's got a nonstop motor. He is really, really freaking good. He's super talented. By all reports, is a fantastic leader. Pretty much no holes in Will Anderson as a prospect. 4th to Indianapolis is Anthony Richardson. Interesting guy. I mean, if you go back 2 months ago, quarterback from Florida. If you go back 2 months ago, we're talking about maybe end of the first round, maybe second round. And then he goes to the combine and just absolutely blows it out of the water. And now he's seen as a guy who's going to probably go in the top 5. And then we got Jalen Carter, Greg. And this guy is pretty interesting. I get your read on the top 5 here, but Jalen Carter is very interesting. Obviously, he's a guy who has tons of talent, might be one of the most talented players in the draft, but work ethic is questioned. At his pro day, he had gained 9 pounds since the combine. He couldn't make it through the workout. He's not taking any visits outside of the top 10. He obviously has the off the field stuff where, they had the street racing incident where a teammate of his and another person that was involved with the Alabama program, one got hurt, one died, or both died. It was a very serious situation. It happened right at the combine. Carter had to leave and then go. He's been a mess really since the end of the football season, but Greg, nobody is doubting this dude's talent. You got him going 5th overall to P.T. Carroll in Seattle. So Young, Stroud, Anderson, Richardson, Carter, top 5. Just your kind of general thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think Bryce Young is pretty solid at the top. He's undersized, and I understand that, but I just think he's way more advanced than the other quarterback prospects in this draft. And I think that he's done he's been undersized his whole career, and he does a good job of avoiding hits, and he understands the way he needs to play. And I just think he's the solid pick up there. Stroud at 2, that's a bit of an X factor. I could see the Texans, they'll raffle that off, and but they could take Anderson. I just don't think there's a great number 2 pick if they pass on a quarterback. And look, if I'm D'Amico Ryans, and I think I heard Mike Lombardi say this, if you're D'Amico Ryans, the new head coach at the Texans, who probably, he's got a 6-year contract, he gets to do anything he wants to the organization. Do you think about tanking this year and doing that sort of thing and getting, trying to get the number 1 pick for Caleb Williams next year, who everyone thinks is, sort of the guy. I could see that. Will Anderson at 3. I think that the Cardinals go, safe and steady at number 3. Number 4, the Colts. Richardson's another X factor. I don't think he's worth the 4th overall pick because I think he needs to sit at least a year. But I do think Shane Steichen, the new coach there, I think, given what he just went through with Jalen Mills in designing the offense sort of for him, I think that Richardson makes a lot more sense for the Colts than other teams. And I think Carter, look, we know the Seahawks history. They have not shied away from character concerns, and they think that very highly of the way they're able to bring people into the building and make them better and more accountable in a team setting. So I just think Carter, I think the Pete Carroll and John Schneider look at Carter and they just see a guy who, if he was clean, he would be the clear number 1 prospect in this draft. I think they could set him straight.
All right, then we move to Detroit. 6th pick, obviously. They just traded Okudah. A lot of people thinking that they might go corner. PFF in this simulation has them going with Witherspoon, cornerback from Illinois, a guy that has been linked with the Patriots from time to time. Looks like he's probably not going to fall to the Patriots to 14, so Witherspoon goes 6th. Peter Skoronski, you go back a month and a half, 2 months ago, this was a popular pick for the Patriots at 14. It seems like he's moving up boards. Skoronski goes to the Raiders, offensive lineman from Northwestern. Tyree Wilson, very interesting prospect out of Texas Tech, edge. He's a pass rusher. Did not necessarily have all these statistics that might, knock you over, but he's a really big athletic dude and one of those projection guys. And he is just zooming up boards over the last couple of weeks. So at 8, the Falcons go with Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. The Bears go with Christian Gonzalez, another corner from Oregon. And then the Eagles at number 10, Lucas Van Ness, which, he seems like a polarizing player. Some people love Van Ness, other people not so sold on him. 6 through 10, Greg, what stands out to you?
Yeah, I think, you looked at, for some reason, I saw a lot of Detroit last year, and they were just horrible at cornerback. And, now that Okudah's gone, it's almost, like you said, it's tailor-made for them to, and I love Witherspoon's tape. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but man, that guy just gets after it, not afraid to tackle. Like, I love his ball skills, his closing skills. Skoronski at the Raiders, the Raiders, I don't know how they feel about Levis, who on my mock right now, Will Levis is the only, top quarterback left on the board. And you could easily see them taking Levis and having him sit behind Jimmy for like a year or getting ready, because we all know that Jimmy's not the most durable guy in the world. But I just look at, from watching them all last year, and they could use a ton of help on defense, so I could see cornerback here. But I think that Skoronski, whether he's a tackle or a guard, you bring him in, he has all-pro talent, whether it's at either spot. And they're, outside of left tackle, the Raiders are a little bit iffy on the offensive line. It was a problem last year. You just bring them in, you say, all right, well, best 5 guys. And, Skoronski, I think, is a good player. I think Falcons, now that they got Okudah, I think they've need pass rush help for years. So I think Tyree Wilson is the best guy there. Gonzalez, again, the Bears could go in a lot of different directions, but I think he's the next best cornerback, and they need help there. We talked about their defense earlier and how it's horrible. And the Eagles are always with Howie Roseman. You just never know what direction they're going to go in. But I think that they have some guys coming up on contracts on the edge that have, like Huff and some other people. And so I think that they need to get younger on the edge. And I think that I see Van Ness as a guy that the Eagles would like.
For Patriots listeners and viewers, you're watching this, you're listening to this. For those hoping for Jackson Smith and Jigba, you can get rid of those hopes, because he goes 11th to the Tennessee Titans. We know all about him, Ohio State wide receiver, fantastic route runner. Then you have Quentin Johnson. So you've got back-to-back wide receivers. Johnston's a big kid, TCU, gets down the field, contested catch kind of guy. Maybe not as good as his potential. When you watch him play, you feel like you can get more out of him. But, of course, there were some pictures and video of Bill Belichick talking to Quentin Johnston recently. And that could be a thing. 13th, another guy that's been talked about with the Patriots, a little undersized edge, Nolan Smith from Georgia. He goes 13th to the Jets. And then we have the 14th pick overall, Greg. He goes with Greg Bedard, turns the card in, Paris Johnson Jr., offensive tackle from the Ohio State University. Greg, tell us why you picked Paris Johnson.
Yeah, I just think that, and there's a lot of different directions the Patriots could go here. There's still some good cornerbacks on the board. Zay Jones is on the board. If you wanted to go running back, the kid out of Texas is still there, even though I would never do that in a million years. I don't think Bill would. I just think, to me, this is a layup for the Patriots. I mean, they will, if this is the board, they will listen, because Levis is still on the board, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm going, Paris Johnson is a guy who can play left tackle, is probably a left tackle. And, you bring him in and he makes things a lot better. Probably Trent Brown is on the way out and you pick up $10 million in cap space. If that's the case, you put Paris Johnson at left tackle, figure out right tackle between Riley Reif, Calvin Anderson, Yadni Kajust, like Stuber, like all these guys. And to me, I just think that makes the Patriots a lot better going forward, where you have the potential franchise left tackle who's big, 6'6", long arms, great athlete. Not a perfect prospect at all, but I think he makes the Patriots a lot better.
So for my simulation, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson, Will Levis went fourth in my draft simulation. Skoronski went to the Seahawks at 5. Jalen Carter went to Detroit at 6. Anthony Richardson is a Las Vegas Raider in this simulation. Tyree Wilson stays at 8 with the Falcons. Witherspoon goes to Chicago at 9. Quentin Johnston is the first receiver off the board at 10 to Philly.
That's a good pick.
Jackson Smith and Jigba goes to Tennessee at 11. Kalijah Kancey, a lot of people talking about Aaron Donald comparisons with that young man after his combine. I would pump the brakes on that, but Kancey goes 12th to Houston. There was a trade there, apparently. Obviously, but thanks to that Denver. What is this? What they do? They did. I'm trying to see what they did here. Hold on one second. Yeah, they get that from Cleveland. That's right. They got the pick from Cleveland. And then Lucas Van Ness goes 13th to the Jets, which left me with Christian Gonzalez and Paris Johnson. Since you picked Paris Johnson, I'll go Christian Gonzalez, top 10 prospect, cornerback out of Oregon. He's a legit CB1, 6'1", $197, ran a 4.38 40, has a 41.5-inch vertical, a dynamic athlete, can play the outside. I went with Christian Gonzalez at number 14. Greg, if you had to make a deal, what are the possibilities here? So
in this scenario with, the 14th overall pick, the way I have it laid out, the quarterback, Will Levis, is still on the board. And so, I think that opens things up to a bunch of different teams. I think, the Raiders might be talking to the Patriots about that. But in my mind, I think the clear team who's sort of waiting in the weeds and, needs help immediately, to me, is the Buccaneers. Jason Light, the GM, we know used to work in New England, has a good relationship with Bill. I think that Tampa comes up from 19 and takes Will Levis at 14. So the Patriots go down to 19. And in that circumstance, I think Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle from Tennessee, who is plug and play at right tackle, has a chance maybe to play left tackle. But I think he's an outstanding prospect. Just look at his film. He shut down Will Anderson in their matchup. And Belichick, I could tell you, loves watching ones-on-ones. He loves watching individual matchups. And when he flips on the film and he sees Darnell Wright from Tennessee shutting down Will Anderson from Alabama, that's the kind of thing that will tickle him in his soft places. And I can see him really liking Darnell Wright.
I'll give you another option here. Seattle has 2 first-round picks. Thanks to that Russell Wilson trade, they obviously have the 5th pick overall, and then they have number 20. If they don't go quarterback at 5, if Levis is still on the board, not a crazy thought that they can move up from 20 to 14 to draft Levis. And just throw a name. A lot of people have talked about him, but somewhere in that 20 range, Zay Flowers makes a little bit more sense to me than 10 to 15. I think he's going to probably be late teens, early to mid 20s, maybe in that range, 6 or 7 picks there. So that could be an option too. You move down to 20, you make that deal with Seattle. Seattle moves up, they draft their quarterback. I know the Geno Smith contract, look, that's a 1-year deal. They're not married to Geno. They move up to 14, they draft Levis, you draft Flowers at 20, and you pick up a 3rd-round pick. That's another possibility. All right, quickly, let's get to the BSJ member question of the day. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, so just to go off this, almost off of Twitter, so there was a report earlier in the day, I figured we'd address it here, and I'd retweeted it. It was it was from Houston Sports Talk Radio, and somebody was basically summarizing what John McClain, who, long time, of course, we know, Texans beat writer, the General, he said, I had someone tell me at the NFL Combine that Caserio is going to return to New England after the draft. McClain followed with, he doesn't believe it, and that the McNairs are happy with him. So just to address that here, this type of talk is not surprising because, look, like we talked about earlier, DeMeco Ryans was brought in as the new head coach. I'm sure he gets to do whatever he wants, and that includes a personnel guy. I'm sure he has his thoughts, but usually personnel stuff, it was very rare that Pat Stewart went from the Panthers to the Patriots before the draft because, these guys have been working on these prospects for multiple years, including this year, going to games and evaluating these guys. So even if you make a move and you go in a different direction, you normally keep that intelligence in-house until the draft's over and then they can leave. So that, Caserio is there through the draft is not surprising. Him coming back to New England would not be surprising, but based on John McClain's comments about how he doesn't believe it and the McNairs are happy with him, to me this smells like Caserio, who has a pretty long contract with the Texans, probably another 3 years left on his deal, or at least a couple, that they move him up to, say, vice president of football operations or something like that. DeMeco Ryans gets his hand-picked director of player personnel or general manager. And, Caserio, we'll see how long he likes that job where he's sort of out of the mix. But that's typically what happens. Do I think Nick could come back here? Yeah, he would be in the same sort of scenario as a lot of guys who have time left on their contracts. I don't think that he would be plugged in and played, as far as over Matt Groh. They have Matt Groh, Elliott Wolf, and Pat Stewart in the building as sort of their triumvirate. I don't know where Caserio falls just as more of a consultant, but I would be highly surprised if Nick Caserio comes back here and suddenly he's general manager or vice president of player personnel.
This episode of the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast, Nick Cattles, brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Sign up now at FanDuel.com/Boston. Claim your $200 bonus. He's Greg. I'm Nick. Anything big happens, we'll be all over it. Of course, we'll be back next week. Maybe do some more draft stuff, see what else is being said. Probably more Mac Jones crap. Until then, be safe, be well, be good, and enjoy your weekend, everybody.